Throwaway because my parents, my sister, and half the church ladies in our suburb lurk on my mane. I'm 22, hands still shaking as I hammer these keys, but the subpoenas are en route, and I need one place where the whole rotten timeline lives. If you've ever wondered how far family will tilt reality just to grab cash, buckle up. Spoiler, they picked the wrong kid to gaslight. First, the money. My maternal grandparents worked 300 acres of soybeans until arthritis sidelined the tractors. They sold the farm in 1999, stuffed equal chunks of the proceeds into two separate 529 college plans, and made it a point to announce at every holiday, "Education is freedom, kids." Their attorney wrote the plans so tight, Houdini couldn't wiggle through. The money could pay only qualified education costs for the named beneficiary, and withdrawals required dual signatures from both parents, plus proof of expense. Mom hated not controlling things. She also hated that her little sister, my aunt, called her a helicopter even before the internet had memes about it. I was born premature, nothing dramatic, just a short NICU stay. Mom latched onto that narrative like a tick. At every pediatric visit, she recited imagined symptoms: poor eye contact, delayed speech, floppy muscle tone. None of the doctors found anything beyond normal variation, but Mom cherry-picked words like monitor into full-blown tragedy. When I turned 4, she dragged me to a well-regarded pediatric neurologist downtown. He ran standard developmental assessments and concluded, in writing, that I was within normal cognitive range. Mom drove me home in silence, then swung by a print shop. 15 minutes later, she held fresh letterhead and blank forms. By dinner, she announced that the doctor confirmed profound global developmental delays and that, effective immediately, public preschool was off the table because we don't want Matthew mocked. That's how I spent elementary school isolated at the kitchen table tracing oversized letters while Lily, 2 years younger, neurotypical, and visibly bored, went to a private Montessori paid out of their salaries. I grasped reading on my own, sneaking chapter books from the library, while Mom thought I was flipping through picture pages. She praised me for recognizing sight words. I'd already devoured 2 Harry Potter books under the blankets. Grandpa died in a tractor rollover when I was 8. Grandma followed of a stroke 11 months later. The funeral reception blurred together, but one memory is tattoo-level permanent. Mom cornering the family lawyer near the buffet, whispering fast, eyes shining. The next month, she filed paperwork making herself sole custodian of my 529 plan due to anticipated lifelong disability. Nobody challenged her because grief fog plus Mom's dramatics equals 0 resistance. Middle school hit, and I begged to attend public classes, partly to escape the house, partly to test myself against actual standards. Mom relented, kind of, and had me evaluated for special education placement. She submitted the forged neurologist report and answered the adaptive behavior questionnaire as if I still needed help feeding myself. The district, fearing lawsuit, threw me into a life skills classroom. My classmates folded napkins for the cafeteria and practiced dialing 911 on disconnected phones. I snuck worksheets home, solved them, then forgot to hand them in so Mom never saw my grades. At home, Dad lost his sales job to the 2008 downturn. Tension leaked through the walls. Mortgage payments turned late. Lily's dance classes disappeared. One night, through the HVAC vent, I heard Mom hiss, "At least we still have Matthew's college fund in reserve." Dad countered that I would never use it, so why not divert it to Lily, the high-achieving one? Wine glasses clinked. My stomach knotted. That was the precise second I vowed revenge. I started playing the fool strategically. Nobody suspects the kid staring into space is memorizing every lie. On the school Chromebook, I discovered Khan Academy, MIT OpenCourseWare, and PDFs of high school texts. I woke at 4 a.m. daily, studied until 6, then assumed my blank-eyed role for breakfast. By 9th grade, I covert tested myself with the PSAT using a fee waiver I forged from Dad's signature. I scored in the 99th percentile. Guidance called home. Mom dodged. She claimed the computerized score algorithm probably over-accommodated me. Dad eventually found work again, but by then, the financial bleeding had primed them to raid my fund. Mom scheduled a meeting with their financial advisor, a golfing buddy who relied on her cookies and gossip, and got him to process an early qualified withdrawal under fraudulent pretenses. Matthew requires extensive occupational therapy. Therapy costs can be covered under special needs provisions if documented. She supplied fake invoices. First withdrawal, 38 grand. The market was still sluggish, so they promised Lily it was only temporary. Sophomore year, I maneuvered into regular classes by deliberately bombing the annual competence test. The special ed coordinator, confused, offered me a split schedule: core courses mainstreamed, life skills for electives. Perfect camouflage. In mainstream classes, I destroyed every quiz, all while using the accommodation of solo testing rooms, giving me time to tutor myself mid-exam. Junior spring, I registered for the ACT. I pretended to struggle with the website until the school facilitated it under disability accommodations, netting me 50% extra time. I finished early, spent the bonus time proofreading, and suspected near perfection. Score release day, 35. The college counselor tried to high-five me. I feigned confusion and muttered that maybe the computers glitched again. That triggered a mandatory review. Mom arrived to the meeting armed with a binder of forged medical histories. The counselor suggested fresh neuropsych testing paid by the district. Mom sobbed that retesting would emotionally devastate me. The room caved because crying white moms are kryptonite to bureaucrats. 2 months later, the state rolled out a scholarship for students with documented disabilities who exceed academic expectations. Full tuition at any in-state public university, plus a living stipend. The application required school records, diagnosis documentation, and 2 essays. I wrote the essays at 3 a.m., attached the very paperwork Mom had faked, and clicked submit. Fraud defeating fraud felt like karmic symmetry. Senior year, chaos crescendoed. Within 5 days, scholarship awarded, Lily accepted into Rosewood College, price tag 54 grand a year, and Dad promoted to regional manager. Instead of celebrating, Mom panicked because she'd already drained the remaining 529 funds, transferring everything into Lily's tuition account via a maze of family loans she never reported to the IRS. Total misappropriated principal plus gains, $152,406. I know because I printed the statements myself later. They hosted me a pity party graduation. Theme: you did your best. Balloons shaped like smiley faces wearing mortarboards. Relatives cooed how brave I was, choosing a vocational path. I grinned, thanked them, and pocketed mini quiches for later, because petty calories taste sweeter. A week later, steak dinner night. I dropped the envelope containing my university admission letter, housing contract, and scholarship certificate onto the table. Mom's fork clanged. Lily gasped. Dad went pale. Silence lasted 10 seconds before Mom spat. "This must be a clerical error." I replied, "The only error was believing your lies." Cue meltdown. Mom claimed I'd never make it through orientation. Dad accused me of orchestrating an elaborate prank. Lily pleaded that I was jeopardizing her future. I recorded everything on my phone propped against the salt shaker. I moved into the dorm mid-August. Scholarship covered fees, housing, meal plan. I used saved summer job cash to buy a refurbished laptop. First free afternoon, I walked to the credit union managing the 529 plans. Federal law lets a beneficiary request statement histories. The teller printed every page, 15 years of deposits, market gains, and 2 giant withdrawals. She slid the pile across and whispered, "Good luck." Finding a lawyer took 3 tries because most heard family issue and suggested therapy. Attorney number 3, Mr. Ruiz, ran a nonprofit clinic by day and moonlighted civil cases for fees. He read the documents, whistled, and said, "They committed fiduciary breach, fraud, maybe wire fraud. Do you want scorched earth?" I answered, "I want them financially disabled." He grinned, offered a contingency arrangement, and told me to keep quiet publicly. First step, secure medical evidence. HIPAA permits adult patients full record access. I paid $40 for the original neurologist file. No mention of delays, just advice to encourage age-appropriate play. Second step, gather school data. Under FERPA, I requested my complete educational record. It held multiple copies of the same forged letterhead, dated years apart, each in a slightly different font. Sloppy. Thanksgiving break, I stayed with friends, citing a group project. Instead, Ruiz overnighted cease and desist letters to my parents, Lily, the financial advisor, and the tuition office at Rosewood College, attaching preliminary notices of intent to sue. Lily FaceTimed me in tears. I suggested she ask Mom about the therapy invoices. She hung up. Christmas I did go home, mostly to raid the attic. While everyone slept, I photographed Mom's shredding pile, earlier drafts of forged letters, sticky notes plotting withdrawal schedules, and one telling line, "Matthew will never know." I emailed everything to Ruiz at 2 a.m. Spring semester depositions began. Mom arrived with a hard, chill smile she reserves for HOA meetings. Ruiz opened with, "Can you spell the neurologist's clinic name?" She misspelled it. Same error on the forgeries. Game over. Dad tried sympathy, claiming he'd trusted Mom's research. Ruiz unfurled the real medical file. Dad looked like a punctured tire. Meanwhile, Rosewood dropped Lily for non-payment. She moved back home, took retail, and posted Facebook rants about toxic siblings. I screenshotted them as potential defamation ammo. Mediation convened in June. Our demand letter listed restitution of misused funds with market appreciation, punitive damages, legal fees, and a public apology. Mom counteroffered tuition reimbursement only if I signed an NDA and wrote a statement confirming I'd misinterpreted events. I laughed out loud. Mediation imploded. Trial calendar was set for November. Discovery kept coughing up gems. Emails between Mom and the advisor literally titled Creative Accounting. One exchange suggested laundering withdrawals through Lily's custodial account, in case Matthew miraculously applies to college. The advisor's insurer caved early. Court week deserves its own highlight reel. Ruiz drilled me for cross-examination, like I was training for Olympic truth-telling. We rented a Holiday Inn conference room and ran mock testimony until my throat felt like sandpaper. Ruiz kept saying, "Juries love authenticity, not perfection. Tell the story, own the pain, let the exhibits speak." Jury selection morning. Mom arrived in a pastel suit and grandma's pearls. banking on nostalgia to whitewash fraud. Dad avoided my eyes. Lily perched behind them, chewing her lip like a hostage. Ruiz greeted opposing counsel with, "We prefer the transparency of a jury, but settlement options remain open if your clients wish to accept responsibility." Their lawyer mumbled about interpretation. The first witness was the financial advisor. He tried the ignorance defense, claiming reliance on Mom's documentation. Ruiz slid across a color copy of a therapy invoice dated 3 months after the clinic shut down. Jurors leaned forward. By lunch, the advisor's carrier authorized a separate settlement, leaving my parents alone at counsel table. I took the stand near adjournment. Ruiz led me through childhood, silent study sessions, forged letters. Then he asked why I stayed quiet so long. I said, "Because when everyone you trust insists you're broken, silence feels safer than truth." One juror wiped a tear. Opposing counsel requested a recess instead of cross-examination. We never resumed. Next morning, before the judge entered, their attorney offered unconditional settlement. Ruiz countered with our previous demand to the penny and added a public apology stipulation. They caved. Final figure, $213,894.42, secured by consent judgment so they can't wiggle out later. Ruiz shook my hand and whispered, "You just won your life back." Settlement money landed in my dedicated account 3 days ago. After Ruiz's cut and taxes, net to me, $151,602. I'd already paid spring tuition, upgraded my battered hatchback, and parked the rest in index funds titled solely to me. The fallout is delicious. The IRS opened an audit focusing on misuse of 529 distributions labeled qualified therapy. Penalties and back taxes could top 40 grand. Lily needed a co-signer to finish her last 2 semesters at the state university. Dad's company quietly reassigned him to a non-customer-facing role after HR received anonymous packets containing depositions. Wonder who mailed them. Some Redditors will ask why I'm not pursuing criminal charges. Ruiz handed everything to the county prosecutor. White-collar units move glacially, but I testified before a grand jury last month. No idea if indictments will follow. Civil victory tastes sweet enough. I know people will shout, "They're still your parents." Parents earn that title through care, not DNA. They groomed me to accept being less so they could turn my future into a checking account. Forgiveness is off the table, along with holiday invitations. Before anyone accuses me of profiting from disability, remember the scholarship switch. Once the board learned about the forged diagnosis, they offered me a merit award of equal value. I speak annually at their conference about guardianship abuse. Last panel I held up an empty wine bottle, the same brand my parents toasted the night they looted my plan, and said, "This was once my worth. Now it's just trash." And yes, I mailed that bottle back to them. Settlement copy rolled inside like a message in a very salty sea. Tips if you suspect similar sabotage. Secure your identity documents. Open a private cloud drive. Screenshot everything. Play dumb until you hire counsel. Shock is leverage. Autonomy is not a gift. It's a muscle. Exercise it. Update 1 year out. Bachelor's degree shown completed magna cum laude last Saturday. Starting a combined master's in forensic accounting this fall, because poetic justice loves credentials. I rented the auditorium's digital billboard for 10 minutes after commencement to display, "Mom, Dad, watch what this disabled mind does next." Cost me $100, worth every penny. Parents downsized to a 2-bedroom rental 30 miles out. They sold the suburban McMansion to cover IRS penalties and Lily's tuition bills. She called last week to demand a cosign. I blocked the number. I'm living in a small, off-campus apartment with 2 friends who know the whole saga. We named our Wi-Fi Therapy Expenses. Whenever imposter syndrome creeps in, I log into my brokerage account and watch the settlement dollars quietly compound. Revenge pays dividends, literally. So that's the saga. No sequel with hugs, no tearful reunions. Just accountability, compound interest, and the satisfying thud when a liar's narrative collapses under its own forged paperwork. I will never forgive them for anything.